Imagine waking up one day and realizing you're not the one calling the shots anymore. Not completely, not freely, not without that nagging voice in your head you never asked for, a desire you never really chose. You grab your phone, scrolling mindlessly. You sip your coffee not because you need it, but because it's part of the image you've built for yourself. You light a cigarette, not for enjoyment, but for a moment of peace, for a sense of control. But here's the real kicker. What if the very thing you believe gives you control has actually taken it away from you? Addiction wears many masks. It's the bottle in the kitchen cabinet, the phone beside your bed, the dopamine hit from likes, clicks, reels, the substance, yes, but also the cycle, the ritual, the quiet, insidious remodeling of the soul. Now imagine this. You look in the mirror and you recognize the face, but not the voice inside the head. The thoughts are still yours, technically, but they're edited, redirected, censored by something you never meant to welcome. You're still living your life, but it's as if something else has hacked your inner compass and left you drifting towards something you're not even sure you want. Because addiction doesn't start with the substance. It starts with relief, with distraction, with pain unspoken, boredom unexplored, fear dressed as confidence. You didn't choose this path, not fully, but you did walk it. And now, something else is walking it, with you, guiding your hand, steering your cravings, hijacking your will. But here's the real paradox. Addiction often feels like the only thing that makes you feel like yourself. That cigarette, that drink, that screen, that hit. They bring you back to something familiar, something comforting, something that feels like home. Until you realize it is your home now. Not the person you used to be, not the life you thought you were building, just the next dose, the next scroll, the next numbness. So what happened? What force is powerful enough to recode your brain, to rewrite your identity from the inside out? Science might call it neuroplasticity. Psychology might call it trauma, coping, or chemical reinforcement. But in real terms, it's something deeper, more frightening. Because addiction doesn't just steal your time or your health. It steals your I, the part of you that chooses, the part that reflects, the part that resists. And that loss, it's slow, it's subtle, and most terrifying of all, it feels natural. So now, let me ask you, who are you, really, without your habits? What would your life look like if you weren't addicted to anything? Could you even recognize yourself? Or would you feel empty, unmoored, lost? Maybe you're already feeling it, that quiet terror beneath the surface. That maybe, just maybe, you're not as in control as you thought. That maybe you've been negotiating with a parasite that knows you better than you know yourself. One that doesn't scream or threaten. It seduces, it whispers, it convinces you that it's your best friend, your only relief, your true self. But what if the most familiar voice in your head isn't actually yours anymore? We live in an age where addiction isn't just a personal affliction, it's a cultural norm. Dopamine is sold like candy, attention is currency. And the longer you stay addicted, the more the world profits off your unconsciousness. So how did this happen? How did we go from sovereign minds to chemical puppets, from humans to habits? And most important of all, can we ever get ourselves back? Let's begin the descent, not to escape, but to understand, because the only way to kill a parasite is to see it clearly. And once you do, you may never be able to unsee it again. It begins long before the first hit, long before the first sip, the first scroll, the first secret indulgence. It begins in the quiet spaces inside you, the places no one else sees. The moment you first felt alone, the first time you were overwhelmed, misunderstood, unloved, or simply bored. Addiction is not born from pleasure, it is born from absence. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul." Addiction is precisely that. an elaborate avoidance. A magnificent construction designed to help you not feel the dread, not feel the void, not feel the ancient ache that no one taught you how to name. Your brain is a miraculous machine, constantly seeking equilibrium. When you experience deep pain, confusion, or despair, and there's no healthy outlet for it, your psyche adapts. It learns to cope, to numb, to replace. Over time, you stop searching for healing, you start searching for anesthesia, and the brain, in its neurochemical brilliance, obliges, it rewires. It learns to associate dopamine not with joy, but with escape, not with creation, but with consumption. Every hit becomes a vote for disconnection. But here's the terrifying part. Your identity forms around this process. You begin to define yourself through your habits. I'm a smoker. I can't function without coffee. I'm just someone who scrolls at night. I'm a party person. I need it to relax. These aren't just excuses, they're identifiers, labels, masks. And slowly, you forget that there was ever a version of you without them. Arthur Schopenhauer called it the will to live, a force deeper than reason, more primal than logic. But in addiction, that will is hijacked. What you crave is no longer life, but distraction from it. Not expansion, but reduction. A shrinking of awareness into a single, desperate desire. Addiction doesn't ask for your consent. It just slips in. With every repetition, it roots itself deeper into your nervous system, creating loops, routines, rituals, until your mind is no longer asking, "Is this good for me?" but instead screaming, "How soon can I get it again?" In this shift, freedom is replaced with predictability. You no longer chase meaning, you chase relief. You no longer ask, "Who am I?" You ask, "When is my next fix?" It is here, in this space, that modern society flourishes. Aldous Huxley warned us in Brave New World. We are not being enslaved by pain, but by pleasure. In the world today, addiction is not the exception, it's the default. Our technologies, our food, our entertainment, they are designed to exploit the reward circuitry of the brain. It's not a glitch, it's the business model. You are not weak, you are targeted. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of bad faith, the self-deception we practice to avoid facing the weight of our own freedom. And addiction, in a way, is the most seductive form of bad faith, because it tells you, don't worry about your freedom, don't worry about your purpose, just stay here, in the loop. It's safe, it's easy, it's familiar. And when you accept that, you stop being a subject, and you become an object, a thing that reacts rather than reflects. But the deepest danger lies not in the substance or the behavior. It lies in what the addiction protects you from feeling. It shields you from the abyss, the existential dread, the raw vulnerability of being a conscious being in an uncertain world. Addiction, at its core, is a strategy, a brilliant, desperate strategy to avoid facing your inner void. But in avoiding it, you also avoid yourself. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said, "When a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure." That is the essence, that is the root. And now, here's the question that stings. If all your addictions were taken from you, what would remain? Would there be meaning? Would there be connection? Would there be peace? Or would there be only silence and fear? This is the dilemma. The silent psychological war playing out within you. It is not a matter of willpower. It is a matter of identity. Because addiction doesn't cling to your logic. It clings to your story. It whispers, "This is who you are. This is all you are. This is what makes you, you." And so, the deeper question arises, who are you when you stop running? Who are you without the anesthesia? Do you even want to know? Because knowing might change everything. You think it's just a habit, a temporary escape, a little reward at the end of a hard day. But addiction doesn't operate in a vacuum. It creeps outward, silently, reshaping the very architecture of your life. Not just your health, not just your time, but your perception, your relationships, your decisions. You stop noticing the subtle shifts, that you no longer enjoy things without the boost, that silence has become unbearable, that conversations feel dull unless you're stimulated, that joy feels flat unless it's followed by a hit. You are no longer experiencing reality, you are buffering it. Your brain, once a symphony of curiosity, wonder and depth, has become a machine conditioned for one thing: dopamine. And like a machine, it learns to optimize. So what does it do? It narrows your interests. It flattens your emotions. It prunes away the parts of you that don't serve the loop. Every behavior that doesn't lead to a reward gets deprioritized. Every thought that doesn't end in relief gets silenced. The reward system in your brain, the very mechanism responsible for learning, motivation, love, and trust, becomes hijacked. It starts associating safety not with connection, but with craving. And this is where the deepest damage happens. In the invisible space between you and the world. You begin seeing people not as souls to connect with, but as distractions to avoid. You lose the art of stillness, of boredom, of waiting. You fear your own thoughts. You chase the next moment to avoid this one, because this one, it's too raw, too quiet, too honest. Addiction rewires you to survive on the surface of life. No more depth, no more presence, only inputs, only hits, only what's next. And in doing so, it carves out a different version of you, one that is always seeking, but never finding. One that is surrounded, but always lonely. One that is filled with noise, but always numb. Cognitive neuroscience tells us that chronic addiction reduces the density of gray matter in areas responsible for impulse control, decision-making, empathy, and memory. But you don't need an MRI to see this erosion. You feel it in the forgotten dreams, in the missed opportunities, in the conversations you no longer have, because you're always half there. And the worst part? You start to think this is normal. You normalize the fatigue, the anxiety, the lack of meaning. You chalk it up to age, to stress, to life being hard. But deep down, a part of you knows that something vital has been muted, knows that you used to feel more, think more, care more, and yet you can't stop, because your brain is now protecting the addiction. Like a wounded animal guarding its wound, it tells you lies. I need this to focus. This is who I am now. I'll stop once things calm down. It's not that bad. But look closely at the cost. How many relationships have suffered because of your distance? How many moments have you missed because you were chasing a chemical? How many times have you betrayed yourself just to feel okay for 5 more minutes? This is the tragedy no one sees. The erosion of the soul masked as convenience. You smile, you work, you show up. But internally, you're dimming, drifting, becoming replaceable. Not in the economic sense, in the human sense. You were born with the capacity for awe, wonder, intimacy, creativity, patience, courage. But addiction rewires all of those into a single imperative: feed the loop. And society? It celebrates you for it. It rewards your numbed productivity. It monetizes your distraction. It encourages your constant stimulation, because a distracted mind is a profitable mind. So you become part of the machine, not because you're weak, but because the machine was built to catch you. Even your sense of time shifts. The future feels distant, the past feels foggy, and the present, it's just something to get through. Addiction teaches you to live in fragments. 5 minutes here, a hit there, a scroll, a bite, a sip, until your whole life is broken into pieces that never add up to a whole. You forget what it feels like to be still, to sit with discomfort and not flee, to be present and not need to escape. And eventually, the addiction isn't even pleasurable. It just becomes familiar. A part of your nervous system, a phantom limb, a false friend. You don't even enjoy it anymore. You just need it to feel normal. But let me ask you, what if your normal is a cage? What if the version of you that wakes up every morning is just a ghost of who you were meant to be? What if the silence you fear is where your real self has been waiting? There's something you must understand now. Addiction doesn't just rob you of your joy. It robs you of your capacity to recognize joy when it's right in front of you. And that is the deepest wound. It begins in a whisper, not in the roar of a rehab commercial or the clamor of a rock bottom, but in that quiet, aching moment when you realize you're not alive. You're just not dying fast enough. And something inside you, something ancient and buried, finally stirs. It does not shout, it does not rage. It simply asks, what if there's more? Breaking free from addiction is not about quitting. It's about remembering who you were before the habit, before the craving, before the lie. It is not a war against the substance, it is a reclamation of the self. And that, my friend, is not a detox, it's a rebellion. A rebellion against the wiring that told you pleasure equals meaning. A rebellion against the systems that profit off your numbness. A rebellion against the voice in your head that says, you'll never make it without me. Here's the radical truth. You don't need to become someone new. You need to return to who you were before you were trained to betray yourself. And that return starts with pain. Yes, pain. Because pain is the first honest signal your soul sends when you begin to reawaken. The discomfort you feel when you deny your craving, that's not weakness, that's the muscle of your willpower, long atrophied, flexing again. You won't feel inspired at first, you'll feel lost. Because when the loop ends, the silence begins, and in that silence lives every fear you've ever numbed, but walk into it anyway. Because that's where the map is. The first step is not quitting, it's noticing. Noticing when your hand moves without you, when your thoughts get hijacked mid-sentence, when your craving disguises itself as self-care. Catch it, call it out, name it. Because anything you can name, you can begin to reclaim. This isn't about shame, this is about witnessing. Become the observer of your own mind. The quiet presence that sees without judgment. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of ourselves we bury to survive. But he also taught, that which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. Your addiction is not your fate. It's your unspoken pain looping in disguise. To stop it, you must become conscious. So how? Start with ritual, but not the addictive kind. The sacred kind. Make your mornings intentional, make your boredom fertile, replace the hit with breath, with movement, with silence. You'll resist this at first. Your mind will scream for distraction. Let it scream, but don't obey. Sit in the hunger, stare into the flame, and watch the illusion burn. Every time you deny the craving, you feed a different wolf inside you, the one that doesn't want comfort, but clarity. Nietzsche once said, he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So ask yourself, what is your why? What do you long for beneath the craving? Love, peace, presence, freedom. Because that is your compass. That is the self-addiction tried to bury. And here's where it gets powerful. The brain that was rewired can be rewired again. Neuroplasticity is not your enemy. It's your redemption. Every time you choose stillness over stimulus, presence over pleasure, purpose over pattern, you lay down a new track in the brain, a new identity, a new path. But it must be walked daily. No heroics, no fanfare, just consistency. And when you fall, not if, but when, fall consciously, fall with grace, then rise again. Because this isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. You don't fight addiction by shaming yourself into submission. You fight it by loving yourself back into wholeness. Viktor Frankl, who endured the unbearable, taught us, Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That space, that's where your rebellion lives. It's not glamorous, it's not cinematic, it's slow, messy, lonely at times, but it is sacred, because every day you choose not to numb. You remember yourself. You remember what it feels like to cry without shame, to laugh without intoxication, to sit still and feel everything. That's not weakness, that's resurrection. You are not your addiction. You are the witness to it. You are the spirit underneath it. You are the one who chooses. So rise, not with violence, not with fury, but with the quiet, defiant certainty of a soul returning home. There comes a moment, so quiet, so ordinary, that no one else notices it but you. No thunder, no applause, just stillness. You're sitting alone, no distractions, no stimulation, no crutch. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you don't reach for anything. Not your phone, not a drink, not a thought to run from. You just sit. And in that sitting, you remember. You remember what it feels like to be, without numbing, chasing, or performing. It's subtle, but it's everything. The ultimate truth about addiction is not that it steals your life. It's that it steals your capacity to feel life. And once you reclaim that, even in its rawest, ugliest, most vulnerable form, you reclaim everything. Because what you were really looking for all along wasn't the cigarette, wasn't the high, wasn't the buzz or the escape. What you were really searching for was yourself. Not the self dressed in habit, not the self defined by cravings, but the eternal self, the one that existed before the world told you to be more tolerable, more functional, more pleased. That self, it doesn't need a fix, because it isn't broken. And that's the revelation that will stop you in your tracks. You were never the addict. You were never the algorithm. You were never the habit loop. You were the light beneath all of it, waiting to be uncovered. For so long, you believed the story that your brain told you. You are a sum of your impulses. You are what you crave. You are what you do repeatedly. But that was a half-truth. Because you are also the space between your cravings, the pause between your thoughts, the presence behind your patterns. The truth, the ultimate truth, is that freedom is not something you fight for. It is something you remember. It was always yours. But we are conditioned to forget. From the moment we're born, we're taught that relief is external, that comfort must be purchased, that pain must be silenced, that joy must be instant. And so we build lives of noise, distraction, and dopamine until silence becomes unbearable, until presence feels like prison. But here is where the story turns. Presence is not the prison. Addiction is, because addiction demands that every moment be better. Presence requires nothing. It is not improved, it is received. You don't have to escape your life. You have to enter it, fully, consciously, bravely. Addiction says, run. Presence says, stay. Addiction says, fix it. Presence says, feel it. Addiction says, you're not enough. Presence says, you are already whole. This is the truth that addiction cannot survive. And once you see it clearly, even once, it changes everything. You'll still crave. You'll still slip. You'll still hear the whisper just once more. But now, you'll know. You'll know that whisper is not your truth. It is your old wiring, a ghost of a former self. You are not your brain's loops. You are the one watching the loops. You are the awareness that sees the pattern. You are the compassion that forgives the fall. You are the courage that chooses the deeper path, even when it hurts. And yes, it will hurt, because healing is not euphoric. It is disorienting. It is the shattering of illusion, the death of the false self. But every time you choose awareness over escape, you awaken, not in theory, not in metaphor, but in real time. You'll notice colors again. You'll hear music with new ears. You'll cry, and the tears won't drown you. They'll cleanse you. You'll look someone in the eye, not as a performance, but as a connection, and you'll see that they too are wounded. They too are healing. They too are trying to remember who they are beneath the noise. And in that moment, you'll feel it. You're back. Not as a perfect version, not as a detoxed saint, but as a human, fully present, beautifully flawed, and utterly alive. Addiction wants to make you forget that life is enough. Healing makes you remember that you are. So here's the final paradox. You don't need to kill your addiction. You need to outgrow it by expanding your presence, by deepening your capacity to feel, by daring to be here now without running, because the life you were chasing through addiction, it's been waiting for you right here, in this breath, in this silence, in this space between impulse and choice. You've always had the power not to beat addiction, but to transcend it, not by force, but by truth. The truth that you are not your hunger, you are not your habits, you are not your history. You are the one who chooses what comes next. So what will it be? Another loop? Another numb morning? Another ghost day? Or will you choose to remember? Will you choose to awaken? Will you choose to come home because the door has always been open and now? So are you.